Hey, everybody, welcome to EverydayFI, where we explore the lives of everyday people pursuing financial independence. I'm your host, Meghan Combs, and I'm here to show you that you do not need a $1 million book deal or a famous blog to reach FI early. By talking with real humans, I'll show you how you can forge your own path to financial freedom the everyday way. In today's episode, I am joined by an anonymous guest who shares her inspiring journey towards financial independence. Our guest talks about her background, including a diverse career path that led her ultimately to law. She discusses the challenges of running her own law firm, her frugal upbringing, and how her experiences have shaped her financial philosophies. She also shares her passion for traveling, learning languages, and creating opportunities for young women in the legal field. Also, I wanted to note that this guest actually decided to become anonymous after we had already recorded, so you may hear some blips where her name was originally said but isn't said anymore. Join me as I explore my guest's story after a word from our sponsors. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. Today, I'm chatting with my friend, and I'm pretty sure that you were at Camp FI because I think your name is on the Camp FI list. When I went to look up the outline for us today, I saw the Camp FI list come up. So I don't know if we were there at the same time. I don't think I actually met you, but that's awesome that you were at Camp FI. And I'm sorry I didn't get to meet you in person, but maybe at another Camp FI. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. And I'm so pleased to be here. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to chat about financial independence. My name is, I live in Colorado in a small town, low cost of living area, and I'm a small business owner. So I run a law firm and yeah, I'm hopeful to be retiring or reaching my FI number within the next 2 years is my goal.
Wow, that's fast. That's amazing. Congratulations. And if you don't mind me asking, how old are you? So I want to know, like, how fast are you getting to that number?
I'm 43 right now, so my goal is to be FI by 45.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, that's my goal too. So I don't know if I'm going to make it, but I hope I do. So maybe I'll be behind you. No, that's amazing. Okay, but I have to ask, where in Colorado is a low cost of living city? I don't think I've ever heard that.
That's a great question. You definitely have to look outside of your major metropolitan areas. So you're not going to be finding me in Denver, you're not going to be finding me in Colorado Springs, but there are a surprising number of smaller towns with really excellent quality of life, low traffic, relatively affordable cost of living. And I look at that as having come from Los Angeles, which is where I'm actually from originally. And so when I moved here in 2013, single family homes were going for $150,000. And so to me, that was really within the realm of reality for actually gaining some financial traction.
Yeah, that's incredible. And now I get it because if you're coming from LA, which is really expensive, Colorado would be seen as low cost. I bet even in the larger metropolitan areas. As somebody in North Carolina, knowing how much Colorado costs, we would love to live there. That's why I'm like, wait, where is the city? But good to know you're in the South. I think I know what areas are down there and what cities are down there. So my family are all in Colorado. Not all of them, but some of them are in Colorado. So yeah, it's such a beautiful state. What brought you there in 2013, actually?
So I went to law school in Pennsylvania, and as soon as I graduated, I was hired to the public defender system in Colorado. And the public defender system is statewide. It's a state-run agency in Colorado. So they predetermine your location when they hire you. And so they placed me in this little town. I didn't know anything about it before I got here. But as soon as I arrived, I fell in love with it and I haven't left since.
Yeah, that's incredible. What made you want to be a lawyer?
Great question. So my dad was a lawyer, but he actually discouraged me from becoming a lawyer. I think that the practice of law is a hard one, emotionally speaking. It costs a lot to get your law degree. Yes, it's not an easy career path. And so that's why I think he was trying to protect me from being burnt out and the psychological and emotional stressors of the legal field. However, one thing I've learned about lawyers is that we can't take other people's advice. We can only give it. So when he was discouraging me, of course, all that did was encourage me to redouble my efforts towards it. But I actually didn't go to law school immediately after college, after my undergrad. I worked in advertising as a creative for about 5 years. Immediately after my undergraduate degree was completed, I also, for a couple of years, was in the motorcycle industry. So I raced, I taught motorcycle riding, and I also wrote for motorcycle magazines. And it was actually during my period of time coaching folks how to ride high performance motorcycle riding techniques that I met somebody who had had a really negative experience in the criminal justice system. And he shared with me how dehumanizing the experience was of being arrested, being jailed, the conditions of what it was like to be inside of the jail facility, how you were treated less than human by staff, how his attorney didn't do a good job for him. And when he told me that story, this is a person that I loved, cared for, respected, what I trusted completely. It was a really defining moment in my career trajectory. And I decided I may not be the smartest person, but I do care about people and I do care about people just like this person. And so it was at that moment I decided to go to law school and to become a public defender specifically. That was my goal. And although going to law school can be very expensive, I was fortunate enough to find a school that actually provided a 66% scholarship to me. And so I was able to keep the costs of going to law school down.
Wow, that's such an incredible story. And there's so much there. It's beautiful how you were able to explore different career paths. I really love that. It just shows that careers are never linear. You don't have to know exactly what you want to do when you're in undergrad. You can explore things. The motorcycle coaching was really cool. So I definitely want to talk about that a little bit. But I love that even though your dad discouraged you from being a lawyer. I know you said you don't take other people's advice, but I feel like it's just amazing how you were called to this because you wanted to serve and help people. That's such a beautiful reason to become a lawyer. My dad is also a lawyer, and there's sometimes people get into law because they might want to help at first, but then they're like, ooh, look at all this pretty money, and they go into like corporate law and things like that. I have several friends who are lawyers and they love their jobs and they make lots of money. But I actually have a couple friends in New York where one woman, she switched to doing something along the lines of your like public defense. And I'm not sure if that's exactly what she does. Don't quote me on this, but it's definitely more helping people. And she was like, you know what? My salary was cut by 2/3, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it because it is so much more fulfilling. And so I just think that's so beautiful. And I do want to talk about that, but I want to know, how did you get into the motorcycle industry and coaching people on how to ride motorcycles? That is so cool. Like, I'm just picturing you in like a leather jacket. Like, you guys can't see Christy right now, but she's beautiful blonde hair. And I'm just seeing like leather jacket and just super cool on a motorcycle.
Yeah, so when I was working in advertising, it was by pure happenstance that most of the accounts I was working on were motorsports related. I had no prior experience with this really. I'd never ridden a motorcycle previous. And frankly, I come from a pretty sheltered or protective background, right? So it's not like my parents took me out dirt bike riding or anything like this. But because I was working on these motorsports related clients and accounts, I was writing about motorcycles. And I decided I can't really speak to people who ride motorcycles unless I do that myself. So I thought the first step is to take the basic motorcycle safety course. I encouraged my older sister to do it with me. So that was a really cute thing for us to do together. But even after taking that basic motorcycle course and getting my endorsement on my driver's license, I realized I was pretty much a danger to myself and others still. I should not be allowed on the streets. So I started researching deeply, how could I get really good at this so that I felt safe and that I could convince my parents that I was going to be a safe motorcycle rider. And one of the things that I found was the California Superbike School, which is a school that teaches high performance motorcycle riding techniques on paved road courses throughout the United States, and they even have international branches. And so here in the United States, the way that the school works is they basically truck a fleet of motorcycles from racetrack to racetrack. And so I went as a student many times, and it was this adrenaline rush. I did this on the weekends, and whenever I could get time off of an advertising job at the time, I liked it because I was getting real data for our advertising campaigns. And I got pretty proficient at it. The school actually encouraged me to start racing, and they offered me a position to come coach. So I started to do that and eventually decided to do that essentially on a full time basis for a couple of years. And it was during those couple of years that I had that light bulb moment that encouraged me to go to law school.
That's so amazing. I would be terrified. Do you own a bike now?
So my last motorcycle, I just gave it to my dad. I actually just signed the title over to my dad. It still is in California with him. So I don't have one in my own garage here right now.
Oh, that's too bad. But no, that's so cool. It's just a really cool story. I just love that so much. Okay, so let's go back to becoming a lawyer. So you said that you got a 66% scholarship. How did you find that?
I didn't know that I would qualify for any scholarships. I applied to lots of law schools. During the period of time that I was applying, I worked very hard to get my LSAT score up so that I would be an appealing candidate. I knew that I was not your standard candidate because I had been out in the workforce doing something not very academic for 5 years, advertising and motorcycle riding. So I knew that I was going to be kind of a funny applicant, if you will, or a non-standard applicant. So I applied to a lot of schools, not knowing how I would be received, really. And I think because I was a little bit out of the box, that made certain schools more interested in me. I did have a relatively good academic background prior. The school that offered me the scholarship called it an academic scholarship, essentially, based on my academics previous. But that also meant that I had to maintain a specific GPA in law school in order to maintain that scholarship. And I would lose it if I fell outside of that GPA bracket.
Yeah, and I bet that's probably even harder in law school than it is at a regular school. That's amazing. It shows me that sometimes there are certain careers or majors where being the non-standard candidate is not a great thing. So it's really cool that the law schools, some of them saw it as a really cool thing. I'm thinking of my own major, art history. Like they definitely, there were some even museums who would only hire from certain schools, and you had to go to that one school. And so it just, it's a very like old elitist, like traditional way of thinking type of atmosphere, at least in the art that I was in. In the contemporary modern world, it's a little different, but I was in like the medieval art, Renaissance art kind of world. So it's just nice to see that other places or other types of careers don't have that kind of bias. So I really love that. And yeah, did you get accepted to multiple schools, or how did you choose the school that you did? And you don't have to tell me what school it is, by the way. I'm just curious how you chose which school to go to.
Yeah, I did get accepted to multiple schools. Some of them were very expensive and there was no scholarship available. And they were like my dream. And I definitely wanted to go there. And then some other schools offered me full rides, but it was contingent upon, for example, being number one in the class. And I knew that is probably a bait and switch situation. Like, how many people are they offering this to, knowing that not everybody can be top in the class, right? So I knew that that was probably not the right fit. And I had a really eye opening conversation with one of my older brothers. He encouraged me to think of the law school degree as a tool, not as a pedigree. So to think of it literally as like a screwdriver or a hammer. And you could go spend the most on a craftsman tool and it will screw a screw, it will hammer a nail, or you can go to Harbor Freight and you can buy the same tool for $2.67 and it will do the exact same job. And so that reframe of the decision helped me to not choose the schools that were my dream or my aspirational schools, but it would put me in $250,000 worth of debt, and would define how much I needed to make in the future. It would tell me I need to be in a high income bracket to ever have a hope of paying that off. By choosing a school where the end of the line price tag was going to be reasonable would give me flexibility to choose to do what I wanted to do. I didn't have to work in corporate law. I didn't have to do something that didn't align with my ethics, for example. I could choose to do the kind of law that lights me up. And so I'm really fortunate for that conversation and for having chosen the school that I did.
Yeah, that's such an important message. And I'm so glad that your brother said it like that. Think of a degree as a tool, not a pedigree. I really like that a lot. And I can only imagine which schools you might have gotten into. And of course, in a moment, it's, oh, yeah, I have this school on my resume. That's something really fancy. But you're right. Like, it's almost, if you follow that quote unquote dream of that school and think about it in that kind of narrow sense of I have this name on my resume, then you are pigeonholed into certain kinds of jobs because you have to pay off all this student loan or all this student loan debt. And I love that you're pointing this out because I think it's going to be important for a lot of people who might be younger, who might be listening to this, who maybe are applying to like Columbia or Harvard or Yale, and they're like, these are my dream schools. And it's, but is it really the school that's going to get you where you need to go? Do you have to go to this kind of school to do the type of job that you want to do? No? Then, I think the only thing that I can think of that might be a little different is if you go into a medical or science school, then you have to go where the best program is for whatever you want to do. But that's the only one I can think of that the school matters more than anything. But everything else, yeah, it's a tool, not a pedigree. I love that. I love your brother. Cool.
I love my brother too.
That's amazing. So it sounds like you definitely care more about being in service to others. And this is obvious in the story that you told me about the person who told you his horrible story about going through the legal system and just being traumatized through that and you wanting to help and changing your entire career to do that. It also is demonstrated in the fact that you didn't go to your dream schools and you went to a school that was good enough so that you didn't have to be beholden to whatever jobs that those student loans would make you beholden to. So it sounds like even though financial independence, we know that's important to you because you're on the show, it sounds like money isn't that important to you. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
What a great question. I completely agree with you. That is exactly accurate. Honestly, I never, uh, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, I presume, but I was never raised to seek wealth. I was never raised to seek money. We were raised very frugally. I would say we're also raised with a great deal of compassion for those around us. And that concept of being in service to my fellow neighbors has always been important to me. As a public defender, I think my highest salary was like $66,000, something like this. And I did not leave the public defender's office to make more money in private practice. I left for other reasons. But basically, I wanted to create a place where women could find promotional opportunities and get a foot in the door in legal practice. So I've had the great pleasure of being able to create employment opportunities for young women in my area to become paralegals, to learn more about the justice system, to start writing motions, to watch court practice happen. That's really the reason why I left the public defender to go into private practice, was to create those opportunities. Now, what sort of happened by happenstance is that when you do something you really love and there's a demand for it, people want to pay you for your skills, your talents, and your passion. So I would say that money has eventually started to come in much greater quantities than I could have ever imagined. But yeah, that was certainly never my goal.
Okay, cool. So are you still doing this job where you're getting opportunities for young women? Is that what you're doing right now? And is that something you said that you're going to reach financial independence in 2 years? Do you plan on stopping doing that, or you're going to reach five, but you're going to continue this passion of yours?
So I run a law firm right now, and I'm the head of the law firm. I have a paralegal, I have a case assistant, I have a second lawyer, I have a handful of investigators who work with me. We have interns on a regular basis who work with us. And my goal with that is to create those opportunities. So that's what I have been doing since about 2021 when I launched my firm. And it's a good question. It's one I'm still trying to come up with the answer to with what will happen in 2 years, whether it's a sale of the company, whether I step back into more of a quiet partner role, or I just limit my caseload. These are all questions that I'm currently working on with, and I'm actually seeking some coaching around right now.
Yeah, that's smart. Okay, so we touched a little bit on your family. So I'd like to go into your money origin story. So you said your dad was a lawyer and you talked about having a sister and a brother. So I'm curious what one of your early money memories is in your kind of family unit that you had.
So many memories, so many. I would say that my dad was a DIY landlord as well as a lawyer, and he knows how to fix anything, and he loves to do things himself. So even if he could hire it out and it could be done inexpensively and quickly, I think, he would rather do it himself. It just gives him a sense of ownership over it. If he doesn't know how to do it, he enjoys learning how to do it. So I was able to see frugality in practice in that way. He owned numerous properties where we grew up, and one of those properties was up for sale. And our job as the kids was to come help him clean the property up before the sale. Now, this was not a residential property. This was a vacant lot in Wilmington, California, and it had been squatted on by folks in the community. So there was all kinds of unpalatable things on the property. And so my dad gave us gloves and old baggy t-shirts and face masks and goggles. I was in middle school, and trash bags and those little pinchers you like pick things up that you don't want to touch with your hands. And he let us loose on this property. This is going to be clean by sunset. And so that's the kind of, although it doesn't have to do with a conversation about money, it is what can you do yourself? Can you do it yourself without hiring somebody else? Then that's probably what you should do. And so that's how I was raised.
And do you remember as a kid how you felt about doing that kind of job? Were you happy to do it? Were you like, this sucks? And you're in middle school, right? So I can only imagine, but I'd love to hear it from you.
Guys, it's hard to step back into that mental space. I'm sure that I didn't love it. I remember it smelling bad. I remember being gross, but it wasn't like my first day in the family, right? So I had been preparing, I had been prepared mentally for my entire life leading up to that moment that we do things like this, right? If there is a sewer backup, families cleaning it up. We're not calling Roto-Rooter. Right? So I think that it wasn't going to Disneyland, but it was something that we knew that we would do.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the reason why I asked is because I remember my dad sounds very similar to your dad, lawyer, DIY. He refuses to call handymans because I can do it myself. Now with him, I think it's more a sense of control. He thinks he can do everything better than other people. I love him. But I remember he had us at our house. He wanted to get like the beds around. We had an outdoor pool because this was in Texas. Everybody had a pool, and all of the beds were a mess. And he wanted to get them, like the flower beds, he wanted to get them all nice. And so he was like, "You guys are going to help me put down weed barrier and mulch and plant some plants and pull some weeds." And this was June, July, August in Texas. So you guys have to wake up at 7 a.m. to help me do this. We were in middle school and high school, and we hated him for it. Even though like we knew we would have to do it, like we hated it because we just wanted to sleep in until noon and then go watch cartoons and then play in the pool. Like this was our summer break. We didn't want to have to do chores. So that's why I was asking, because I was thinking about that when you were talking about this. Because yeah, our dads are like the same person. My dad wanted me to be a lawyer though.
How funny. The reason why it's so hard for me to go back and remember feeling grouchy is that I'm so thankful now. I think that's why it's hard for me to get into the way back machine and remember my 12-year-old self being super in my tie-dye Ben and Jerry's shirt, being grouchy. Like I just can't, because nowadays I feel we look up to people like David Goggins. We're like, embrace the suck. And if the problem's hard, be harder. And I love that. I have that mentality as it comes to my practice of law, right? If my mind is hurting over a legal problem, I'm like, that's because I'm learning something new, right? So I have to view this as an opportunity rather than an obstacle, right? All of these sort of stoic principles about voluntary hardship and overcoming difficulty. I love that he put us through that and encouraged us to learn from those experiences because they paid off so much.
Yeah, and they build character. They make you more adaptive to change. And what is life but change? And sometimes life does suck. So embracing the suck, I love that. And yeah, it's a really good point, because I do remember being angsty as a teen. I was just an angsty teenager, so it was just a common theme for me. But the funny thing is, I love gardening now. I'm not going to wake up at 7 a.m. to go garden, but I love gardening. And now I take what he taught us, like how to do that. Like I did that in my garden beds. I knew how to weed. I knew how to put the barrier down. I knew how to plant things and all of that because of this one summer. I remembered it. And I think I remembered it because it was so uncomfortable. You know what I mean? And it actually turned out to be a great thing. So I'm with you. And yeah, I wish I could go back and tell my teenage self, like, hey, you're going to this one day because you're going to have your own garden. So, how did your parents talk about money, either with each other or with you guys? Did you ever hear or overhear any conversations, or were they very purposeful when they had conversations, either to not have them around you or to have them around you? Do you remember anything about that?
I think that my mom and dad are both frugal people, but between the two of them, I think my dad errs more on the side of frugality and my mom errs more on the side of lived experience today. So she really encouraged my dad to travel. She, I think, has wanderlust in her heart. I know that she recognizes the gift that she brought to their marriage by having that sort of wanderlust. And that if she hadn't sprinkled the fairy dust of wonder into his life, that he might just work all the time. So together, they are a really, I think, beautifully balanced pair. And I hope I can be that in one person, right? That I can work hard, that I can save money. But that's not all, that I can also experience joy and spend money purposefully. So I think that together they were a great example of that. Yeah, I hope that I answered your question. I'm not sure if you wanted like specific conversation, but that was my overall takeaway from it. There were definitely very early on some arguments around money that I don't remember the exact content of, but it probably had to do with my mom wanting to buy us soccer cleats and my dad saying that that's expensive and hard to afford. But at the end of the day, that's soccer cleats, right? So I know that my parents worked together to compromise and to arrive at providing for us and giving us opportunities to do things like sports and music. We were in everything that they could get us involved with. We were in soccer and volleyball and softball. I played musical instruments from the time I was in elementary school, violin and piano, and I was in orchestra and stuff as I got into middle school and high school. So they definitely made opportunities for us to experience all of that. And all of that costs money.
Yeah, and that's a lot of different things. I was thinking of my husband and I are talking about we want to quit corporate by 2030, right? But we also want to have kids. And my husband's kids are so expensive. And I was like, yeah, but we could probably make it work. And he's, yeah, but what if they want to be in all of these things? And I was like, they don't need to be in all of the things. They could probably pick one. He's, I don't want to limit my kids. And I was like, oh God, we don't even have kids yet. We're already having this conversation. So it's something that we're thinking about because I get his perspective. I don't want to limit my kids either. I don't know. As a kid, do you feel like having every single one of those experiences was worth it? Or would you have been like, I'm okay with having one or two of these and focusing in on it and really honing in on some of these, your musical instrument over, say, soccer?
I'll explain this from sort of two perspectives. The first one is I recall my parents specifically saying that they wanted us to be well rounded Renaissance people. So they wanted for us to be athletic and musical and well read and to be able to calculate the tip at a restaurant. So they wanted people who weren't lopsided or extremely obsessed with one thing at the expense of being able to be functional adults, basically. So I know that they really did prize that, even though it cost more. From the kid perspective, I think at the time that I was coming up, I was the youngest of all the kids. Both of my parents were working. So it was good for them to know that I was involved in something until they got home from work. So it's sort of a dual purpose. Not only is she becoming that well-rounded person that we want her to be, but also we know that she's got eyes on her until 5 p.m. And so I think that it's worked on both of those grounds. For me, as a kid, and this is probably my own fault, I don't think it's because of my parents. I think it's my personality type that I have diverse interests and I want to do everything and I'm interested in everything. And so I stack myself with all of these activities. That's just how my mind works. And so I felt like I was in hog heaven and I loved it. So that's how it felt at the time. Would I have been satisfied if they had been like, you have one instrument, pick it, that's it? I think I'm probably too persistent to have just been like, yeah, that's cool. I would have been, I would have found some way to try new instruments, whether that's getting more involved in the band and maybe they have instruments I can borrow without having to pay for them, something like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's also a cool thought experiment because I was just thinking myself, and I know I'm getting on a tangent a little bit, but bear with me, y'all. But I'm thinking about what Chris is my husband, are good at in our personal lives and what we're not so good at. And I'm like, okay, so in our personal lives, we could teach our kids to be the artist, be the musician, be the photographer, be the rock climber. But when it comes to organized sports or dancing or something like that, not our forte. That would be something where we could pay to have them do those things. And then we have the whole rounded individual, but half of it is coming from home and half of it's coming from like an outside teaching source. So I think I solved our problem that's probably not going to happen for a decade or more. So thank you for that. What did your mom do, by the way? You said both your parents worked at a certain time. I don't think we talked about what she did.
My mom was an administrative assistant at a local community college during the time that I was coming up. I think I wasn't around, but it's my understanding that she was a stay-at-home mom during the time that my three older full siblings were coming up. And then she went to work either like maybe right after I was born or right before. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, that's cool. Awesome. So, how would you say your upbringing shaped your financial philosophies as an adult today?
Hmm. So deeply. We're all just, we've got our parents' fingerprints all over us, right? As, yeah, I'm so fortunate. They were frugal, they were wise, and they believed in teaching us as much as they could. And I think that they made the best decisions that they could as they went along, both as parents as well as investors. So my dad and my mom would take me to like real estate open houses, and I wanted them to buy every single house. You guys should buy this. Definitely. I was like 8.5 years old. This is the one, guys. Right? So they gave me this sense that I was involved in their investing decisions, even though obviously they were not listening to their 8-year-old daughter, but they gave me this sense that I was involved in it, that I could be a real estate investor one day. My dad would take me along to work on his rental properties. I was installing insulation in the attic with him at one of the houses. And he's teaching me about how there's fiberglass particles in this. And that's why we have to wear long sleeves and masks and goggles and cover our hair because the fiberglass is really irritating and not good for you. The hands-on experiences and the opportunities that he gave us and that they gave us to be involved gave me the confidence and the interest to learn about real estate as one of the branches of being financially independent. He talked loosely a bit about stocks also, but with a grain of salt because he's almost 90 now. He's seen a number of recessions during his time as an investor and was really pummeled, I think, in the stock market during this period of time. So he taught me a bit about it, but it was with a bit more skepticism. And then obviously day-to-day money management and making do with less. Those were the three branches of sort of financial independence and how I was taught about them. My mom was awesome because she was so good at making do with less. And she would make her own yogurt. I still do this myself today. She would have a crock pot with everything that was left from the week put in there. And so we would have leftover soup. How can you go shopping with coupons? How can you feed a family of four with very little? So I thought that they were just great role models and examples for financial independence.
Yeah, they definitely primed you. It was pretty cool. So I know that you mentioned in the outline that I gave you that it sounds like your parents are still together. Am I getting that right? Yeah. But that you experienced a divorce in your own life, but that it was a very pivotal moment for you. Can you speak more about that experience and how it shaped your adult life and why it was so pivotal for you?
When I saw my parents as such a successful unit, I just thought that's obviously what I am going to do. I'm obviously going to find my success partner and we're going to go forth and succeed together in finances and all other things. And so I was really off kilter after I became divorced in about 2022. And the term financial independence, I started focusing on the independence word. When I was married, financial independence was like, how are we going to do this? And let's lead each other to success. And when it's just you, or just me in my case, everything was my fault. The success was my fault. Any failures were my fault. Decisions that I made or didn't make. I did a lot of procrastinating because I wasn't confident in my own financial education at that point. I didn't really know much about the stock market to give me the confidence to start investing aggressively in that area. I hadn't yet invested in, I don't want to say this, I hadn't yet bought investment properties. At that time, I only had a single family residence. So when I got divorced, I had to have a real heart to heart with myself and say that there are no excuses. There's no one else to blame. It really is the me show. And so it was at that time, after a period of grief, of course, because getting divorced was not part of my dream life at all. I was heartbroken. How do you pick that up and turn it into you being a stronger, more independent person? And so I feel very happy that I was able to turn that corner. And I really turned into financial independence, focusing on how can I educate myself and start to feel confident myself to do this without a partner.
Yeah, that sounds like a really trying experience. And it's definitely one of those moments that you were talking about where you embraced the suck. And this is probably the biggest suck that you might go through. Yes, thanks for sharing that. I do want to get into how you found the financial independence movement. So it sounds like you've been on this path for a little while, but I'd like to know when you came to this community and what drew you in. Who was the person who drew you in? Was it Mr. Money Mustache? Was it a friend? Where did that journey start?
It's been a long running joke or offhanded comment that I'll make when I'm with my dear friends, where I'll do a super cheap thing and I'll say, just being me, doing this super cheapskate thing. And I think like the 50th time I'd said that to one of my closest friends. She said, "Oh, there's like a whole community of people just like you, right?" And I was shocked. I had no idea that I was just like a super weird person who makes her own yogurt in a crock pot once a week. Like I had no concept. And she said, "Yeah, there's like Netflix documentaries about it." I was like, "I don't pay for Netflix. I would have no idea." So she encouraged me to start to watch these Netflix documentaries about it, like How to Get Good with Money was one of them. I think Ramit Sethi, he had a Netflix special going on around that time. And so I ate those up. Oh my gosh, look at this. And they were great entrees into that stock investing area that I had so little confidence or experience in. So I just gobbled up every resource I could. I was listening to every audiobook that I could about financial independence. So, like Morgan Housel, Psychology of Money, J.L. Collins, The Simple Path to Wealth, everything I could get my hands on, I was reading or listening to or watching. And then I wanted to find the tribe because when I'm just listening to this to myself while I'm out hiking, I felt really limited and alone and still unsure. I wanted a sounding board, somebody to bounce these ideas off of. So I did attend Camp FI in 2024. I found who I would consider to be my financial mentor. Her name is Carolyn. She's one of your previous guests, actually. And gosh, once I was able to find a tribe, I was, these are my people. Nobody thinks this is weird. They think it's awesome. They love spreadsheets. Carolyn runs my numbers for me and sends them to me. And it's like, why are you still working? You should be retired already. I just, I love the enthusiasm and the openness and transparency that this community provides in an area that so many people are uncomfortable with and have a stigma talking about.
Yeah, for sure. And what's cool about the FI community too is that there is a community. And I will say I'm not in other financial communities, not really, but when I first came into the personal finance space, I was following like Jean Chatsky and Her Money, and they have online communities, but they don't have camps. They don't have a tendency to, when you meet your friends because you're FI and sometimes not working or on a sabbatical or completely retired, you can go and travel and see your friends. I've got several past guests who talk about how they go to all the different camps. They go to Camp FI, Economy, Camp Mustache, all of the Bali retreats, all of them, because they're just hanging out with their friends. And I just don't know any other financial movement that has that kind of in-person closeness as the FI community. And if you guys don't take anything else away from this episode, go to an in-person event. If you're in the FI community, it's just going to make everything so much more impactful. It's going to make your drive even deeper. Like, it's so amazing. I love it. I love it so much. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast, because like I just want to get to know all of my friends in the FI community even more. Yeah, I'm so with you. And I love that your friend was like, oh, there's an entire cult who's exactly like you. That's so funny.
Exactly, exactly. And I forgot to mention that one of the, imagine a world where you are so disciplined and you are such a good FI person that you can't afford or you don't want to spend $500 to go to an in-person event. Because I was that person. I'd be like, $500? What? No way. There are meetup groups online. So this was like my first go-to when I was looking for tribe. Is I went to meetup.com and I searched for financial independence. And some of these groups are local, but some of them are online and it doesn't matter where you live. So my favorite meetup groups is an online meetup group, the Minneapolis FI group. And like, I've never met these people in person, but they're wonderful. They recognize me. They're super excited to see me. Like, whatever, every other Thursday, I log in there and tell them about the remodel on my house, whatever. And so even these virtual connections are meaningful.
But yeah, they really are. And there's so many that are like that, where there's virtual groups that just get together and are on like Zoom and things like that. So there's something called FinTalks that Amberly Grant does. And I know that they have like a meetup that you can do every week. And it looks like it's at 7:30 Eastern each week. I think you have to pay for that one, but it's not very much money. And she also has a cruise once a year as well. So you not only get like the community with going to one of their events once a week, you can also see people in person. And I haven't done that one personally, but it's on my list for something to do. There's so many. And so it's almost like you get a little overwhelmed. But I know right now economy is going on this weekend as we're recording. This is not going to come out for a few months, but everybody is asking me like, are you at economy? Where are you? Do you want to meet up? And I'm like, I'm not there. I'm sorry. Next year. But you have to pick and choose sometimes, especially if you're still working. So I definitely envy the people who are not working anymore and just go to every single event. They just make room for it in their budget too. They're like, they find cheap ways to get there. They stay with friends who are there and they shell out the money for the ticket. And that is part of their FI life and part of their FI budget. And so it's an awesome community. I could just go on and on about this, but so I know that you, of course, have adopted like a frugal lifestyle because that's how you grew up and everything. But what is your ultimate goal in reaching financial independence? Like, why FI specifically instead of just living like a frugal life? Is there a specific goal you're looking to reach? And when I say goal, I don't mean reaching FI, I mean post FI. What are your goals?
COVID weirdly gave me the sort of clarity and started me on the journey to FI and the why to FI, I would say. So when COVID happened, I was a public defender at that time. And I would have told you, if you asked me, like, who are you? What do you do? What is your purpose? I am a lawyer. I go to court. I represent the indigent accused. But that was all I was. That was 100% of my personality. And that's very unilateral, right? And when COVID happened, I could not go to court. I could not go into the jails and visit with my clients. I couldn't have face to face meetings with my clients. And I had a complete meltdown, an existential crisis level identity issue at that moment. But the flip side of an identity crisis is you really get to think about, who am I if I'm not a lawyer? Who am I if I'm not a workaholic? What were the things I loved to do 10 years ago that I have completely forgotten? During that period of COVID, I did a lot of hiking, a lot of thinking, did a lot of talking with my best friends. And I remembered that I loved to travel and I loved languages. That my undergraduate degree was in international relations. There were these whole facets of my personality and character that were just like sitting on the back shelf, getting dusty. And I started to want to explore those again. And COVID really gave me the time and opportunity to do that. So even though we were on lockdown, I was inside, I found online tutors to start relearning Spanish. And I got really good at it. And now I speak with my Spanish speaking clients directly, which I love. I travel to Latin American countries with frequency and just love the freedom. I think that like languages are the true passports. Right? That you can feel comfortable and confident to go where you want to go, to navigate by yourself, and to not feel intimidated by a language barrier. And after Spanish, I started to learn French. After French, I started to learn Portuguese. So I stopped looking at myself as this small town lawyer who just works all the time. And it really opened my eyes to the global community as a place that I want to inhabit more fully. But my why I want to be financially independent is because although I love my job, it is emotionally taxing for me. Because I love it, because I love my clients so much, I can't do a 50% job. I have to do a 110% job for them. I imagine that the day that I'm able to close that chapter, I'm going to have a full and complete life in a more global way where I am in another country that doesn't speak English. Most likely, I'll be retiring to another country, whether that be Portugal or a Latin American country, or maybe France. That's chapter 3, if you will.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I love that COVID was such a horrible time for 99% of people, but then there's 1% of us who actually saw it as a way of like transformation. And I think this sounds like a story of that. I myself was able to pay down half my student loans because of COVID, because I was not going out. I wasn't spending any money and I just shoved all my extra income in there. And I had a roommate at the time too. So half my housing payment was getting covered. I think even more than half. And so it was like I had all this extra money that I just did that. And yeah, it sounds like that's a great chapter 3. Okay, so normally most of us are like, oh, I'm investing in an index fund and that's how I'm getting to FI. But I know you mentioned that part of your strategy was real estate investing. Do you want to speak a little bit about that and how you came to do real estate investing?
Absolutely. So having had my parents as pretty good role models in the area of DIY, local small scale landlording, that is basically what I started to do. I bought my first single family residence prior to being married. I still have that property. It ended up being way too big for me. So I held on to it, moved into a two-door property. So a property right downtown in my low cost of living area, and rented out that big single family residence. So it's been a really productive rental for me, and it's allowed me to get my feet wet and learn how to be a DIY landlord. I was honestly really on the fence about whether to do it myself or to hire a property manager. I was so bound up and procrastinated in analysis paralysis. But I contacted my dad about it. I contacted my brothers. One of them is a DIY landlord himself. The other one has property managers do all of it for him. So I really had a great sort of sample set to gather all the data about it and their experiences. And at the end of all of that, I thought, let's just give it a try. You're a lawyer. You can probably write a lease. You can probably collect rents. And if you can't, you can always hire a property manager later. And it's been a great experience and really confidence inspiring. So then the second property that I got, one of the houses was livable and the other one was a disaster. And so this was my first foray into basically doing a down to the studs remodel. And I was at Home Depot twice a day, and everyone there knew me by name. When one of the guys went hunting, I would get the elk jerky after the hunting trip. This was like, man, I was in full figuring out how to do everything mode. So where I am right now, doing this recording, I am in a little remodeled house. It is a 420 square foot mother-in-law cottage, one bed, one bath, living room, kitchen. And I live here now, and I'm going to be renting out the main house. So I'm just getting that one ready, and that'll be on the market here shortly. So I've actually downsized from like a 2,000 square foot house down to a 420 square foot house, which is actually perfect. I love it.
Yeah, why not? If it's just you, it's one person doesn't need that much space. What I did when I bought my house, which is only an 1,100 square foot, 2 bedroom, one bath house. We did add a half bathroom because when my husband moved in, I was like, we might need 2 toilets. So at least let's add one more toilet. But I like that we have a small house because guess what? It makes you not buy a bunch of crap because you don't have anywhere to put it. We have 2 closets and that's it. We have nowhere to put anything. Now, we do have a detached garage and that's where all his crap is, his like 3 drum sets and all his climbing gear and all of that. But it's very nice and cozy. It's very cozy. And so I personally don't like the big, huge houses either. So I'm with you on that one. And it's cool that you get to live in like a remodeled house too. So you're like, you got fancy. I don't know how fancy it was, but I feel like that would be nice.
It's definitely the newest feeling house I've ever lived in, for sure. Yeah. So even though this structure was built in, I think, 1906 and has like a 20 by 22 foot floor, yeah, I mean, it's like fresh insulation, fresh drywall, the heaters are new. I built all these IKEA cabinets, like, oof, yeah, it's crispy. I'm loving it.
Fancy. The
Yeah.
only problem with that is it's going to spoil you. And then the next place you live, you're like, oh, this is not as fancy. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, that's great. So we're coming towards the end of our time, but before we log off, I want to talk about any current wins or struggles you're going through right now. And I want to talk about the struggles, or what we like to call challenges, and then we can end on the wins. So, what is something that you are being challenged by right now?
Yes. So I have two challenges that I'm facing right now. One has to do with my law firm. No one really taught me how to run a law firm. And so I'm learning that day by day in the trenches. I've read like The E-Myth, if you've ever heard of that book, but it basically talks about how somebody who's a great pie maker loves making pies. But as soon as she gets too popular and sells so many pies, now she's washing the floors, she's manning the cash register, she's hiring staff, and you just end up hating the business after a while because it's got too much velocity for one person to carry. And I've gotten past that point. Great job, me. And I've hired some additional staff, but we're reaching that point again where we either have to grow up or slow down. And I'm still learning how to deal with that. Am I paddling into the wave? Am I catching this wave, or am I backing out of it? So to me, that's a real psychological and financial challenge for me. And I think honestly, the psychological challenge is I have to take off this self limiter that says I'm a small business owner, because there are law firms that are big law firms. They have to take off the small law firm concept to go there. You have to say, I'm not just one person in a small town. How do we franchise this? How do we hire more? How do we serve more different types of areas of law? And so those are the psychological struggles that I'm facing, and I'm seeking some coaching for to figure out how to deal with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Is part of the coaching figuring out if that's even where you want to go? Yeah. Okay.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Because I go back to, what was this? Why did I start doing this? And it was never about money. It was never about being the most successful. It was about serving the indigent accused as a public defender. That's where my heart has been since the moment that I went to law school. So now that I'm years into this and I have this financial independence concept, this goal, I'm receiving messages and ideas about, oh, you got to launch this thing. You got to sell your business. You've got to scale, right? This is what the popular sort of ideas are. And there's some cognitive dissonance for me because it runs counter to why I started this whole thing in the first place. And it runs counter to creating this place where I can foster young people, young employees, and give them a foothold in the legal community, right? If this thing becomes big, will they be replaced? Will I even be here? So there's a whole bunch of sort of psychological challenges that I face with how to deal with this moment of transition.
Yeah, that makes sense. And okay, you said there are two challenges, right? That was your first one. What's your second one?
The second one is I've reached a net worth milestone that I had sought previously. And I have been warned about the concept of moving the goalposts. And in fact, my financial independence mentor, Carolyn, the one who says, you should already be retired, it is hard for me to take that advice. I feel like I'm not ready for it. And also, at this moment in time when we are having this interview, there's a little bit of a pullback in the stock market right now. So that makes me feel even more insecure. And so the challenge, I guess, is, what do I do right now? I just keep marching ahead, accumulating, or do I take my foot off the gas pedal and experience what she's suggesting, right? Do I actually step back and allow myself to feel what I would feel like if I weren't working? I don't even know how to get there. How do I get to not working? I'm working all the time right now. Yeah, those are the two challenges: is the business, where does it go from here? And then am I moving the goalposts on myself or not?
They definitely sound very linked. I feel like once you figure out with your coach what you want to do with your business, I bet the second challenge of moving the goalposts is going to be clearer. I bet. And I'm very curious if that's the truth, if that happens. So we'll definitely have to bring you back on in a couple of years and maybe a year, maybe less. I don't know. And see where you're at. Definitely. Okay. So we talked about your challenges. Let's talk about your wins right now.
Oh, okay. The biggest win for me right now is completing this house that I'm in right now. So I bought this property in December of 2023, and the first couple of months, I was still getting my old property ready to rent. Once I got that one rented, I was full steam ahead on fixing this little cottage. And so I gave myself a 6-month timeline, pulled the permits, and actually got the project done in that 6-month period. And now I've just moved into this. So to me, that is such a win. I am just like overjoyed that this actually occurred. Yeah, that is my big win. I want to pat myself on the back because I tend to just roll right past the victory and say, what is the next goal?
Yeah, I get that. I do that too. No, that's amazing. That's such a fast turnaround. I'm very yay proud. Okay, so now we are almost done, but before I let you leave, I'd like you to leave the audience with either a life hack recommendation or learning, something that we haven't talked about yet that you can leave us all with.
So in terms of life hacks, I try to be very intentional with every day. And I think that that's something that the FI community shares generally. Like we all view our lives as these finite pieces of time that we're grateful for. And how can we get the most out of them? How can I optimize for this time? So the way that I do that is every morning I journal as I put on some meditation music. And usually the thing I'm journaling about comes into my mind automatically. I'm not like looking for journal prompts or anything. And I always start out with gratitude. What am I grateful for? And sometimes it's I'm grateful for my parents, the way I was raised, my friends, my career, my clients, my business, my employees. Sometimes it's those things. And then I move into what is today going to be? And I manifest how I want the day to reveal itself. So sometimes that's me saying, I'm going to bring love and kindness to every interaction today, or I'm going to be my best version of myself with each person I meet today. And sometimes it's, I'm going to take care of the health of my company by taking these 3 steps by the end of the day. When I do those very defined, clear goals about what I'm going to get accomplished in this one day, inevitably it occurs. And I look back weeks or months later and I think, oh my gosh, I would have never hired my first employee had I not set out. I'm going to figure out the HR rules in Colorado and how to pay somebody appropriately. I wouldn't have health insurance for my company if I hadn't figured out and called a health insurance broker and signed my company up for this. Those, now that I look back on them, they're things I take for granted, but they were tasks that I set out for myself and delineated super clearly in my journal one morning, and I got it done by the end of the day. So that would be my biggest life hack is set out how you're going to use this day to its most extreme potential.
That's excellent advice. I love that so much. It's definitely something that, oh God, when I think about it, there are some days where I'm like, just getting out of bed and doing one thing that's healthy is okay to do as well. There are just sometimes, there's some moments in life where there's so much going on that even if you want to live your days to the full extent that you can, sometimes that full extent is just getting up and putting a smile on your face. And so I love that this journal is not only, okay, we're going to do these 3 things, but it can also be something like that, right? And that you can probably go back and look at your patterns and maybe suss out, okay, what was going on and what are some things I can learn from how I approached each day and how can I get more of these kinds of days? What was going on? How can I make those things happen? I love it as almost like data on yourself. It's like field notes for yourself, right? Well, yeah, I really love that. Thanks for sharing it. And it's a different way of journaling than I've seen before. I've heard of the gratitude, but I like the specifically how to tackle the day type of journal. I really love that. Thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed this, and we'll have to have you back so we can see how things are going with your business.
I hope so. And I hope I get to meet you in person.
Yes, definitely. Thanks for listening to the EverydayFI podcast. If you're loving this show, here are some things you can do. Number 1, subscribe in your favorite podcast player and share the show with your friends and family. You can also find us on YouTube now. Some of the videos actually have our faces. Number 2, please leave a review. I am always looking for ways to improve the show. Number 3, check out my website, everyday-fi.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and leave comments for myself and the guest. Number 4, if you're interested in sharing your own financial independence story and connecting with other community members, you can find a submission form at everyday-fi.com/podcast. And lastly, number 5, join my Patreon membership for only $5 a month at patreon.com/everydayfi podcast. This is a one-woman show, so every little bit of support really helps. See you next time as we continue to go down the path to financial freedom.